Tonight, WrestleMania 37 Night 2, and we will see The Fiend face off once again against Randy Orton. Finally, the time has come, and we're going to see The Fiend, this version of The Fiend, the charred up, different version, the darker version, the version of The Fiend that returned at Fastlane last month. We're going to see him compete for the first time against Randy Orton. Now, as I mentioned, this is the first time that The Fiend's had a match since Tables, Ladders, and Chairs in 2020, where obviously it was in the Firefly Inferno match rather, with Randy Orton. It's going to be the first time since we've seen The Fiend compete since then. It's also going to be The Fiend's first time competing since we've seen this new version of him as well. And I'm kind of interested to see how this is going to work with his ring attire, because I don't know if you've seen this on Raw recently, and it may be just something that I'm looking a bit too much into, but every time The Fiend has been on Raw recently, with Alexa Bliss doing the talking and all that kind of stuff, The Fiend, when he's been sort of turning, he's been turning very robotically. He's been turning sort of, as opposed to turning your head like that and looking over there and looking over there, he's been turning like this. You know, without actually turning his head. It's kind of been a bit like that. And I don't know if... Again, I don't know if it's going to impact the quality of the match. I don't know if, again, logistically, is he actually able to do a lot in that? He took an RKO from Randy Orton recently on Monday Night Raw, and there's still a lot to flesh out about it, I suppose. You could argue maybe this isn't with this version of The Fiend, the sort of dark, burnt version of The Fiend, this kind of version, is it really the full power version of The Fiend? You know, is this still a weakened version? Does that mean that Randy Orton has a chance? You know, that's certainly something to consider there, you could argue. So it's going to be interesting for that. To be honest, I don't see this match really going along that long. I think if WWE was smart, the smart booking decision here is for The Fiend to defeat Randy Orton relatively quickly and relatively comfortably. Considering what Randy Orton's done to The Fiend, I mean, he tried to burn the man alive, you would think it makes sense that The Fiend just, now that he's been resurrected, if you will, by Alexa Bliss, it would make sense that now he's back, that he just absolutely destroys Randy Orton in a couple of seconds. Now, I know some people were surprised, and I was probably in that boat as well, that they were surprised that this was a cinematic match. This wasn't a cinematic match, and that this is just a regular singles match. As of right now, this is just a regular singles match. The reason that I've been seeing and reading, and I think this makes sense, is that the only reason that this is a singles match and not a cinematic match is because they want to do this big grand Fiend entrance tonight at WrestleMania. That's the reason they want to have this take place in front of the crowd. There have been some reports, I think some photos and some leaks online as well about this big Fiend entrance that we're going to see. And to be honest, I'm happy to see that. This is the Fiend's first WrestleMania inside of a stadium. You have to remember that. Last year, he was set to face John Cena. Of course, it happened in the end. It was the Firefly Funhouse match, but it was a cinematic match. It was taped. There was no one in attendance for that because it was happening at the height of the pandemic. So this is the first time that The Fiend is going to actually be there in front of a live crowd, and he's actually going to, you know, have this big WrestleMania moment, which is great. I'm a big fan of the Fiend character, and I'm a big fan of this storyline. And I know not a lot of people that's unfair. I was going to say not a lot of people are, but it divides people. It divides people. It certainly polarizes people, and that's understandable. You know, this one comes down to just philosophy. I think this one comes down to just your opinion on pro wrestling, frankly. This one's all about, you know, I've seen some people criticize the supernatural elements of this because we've seen, obviously, the story was that they were feuding anyway, and then they had the Firefly Inferno match. Randy Orton burns the Fiend alive. The Fiend's gone. The Fiend's disappeared. And then the feud continues by proxy of Alexa Bliss. She's still kind of in touch with the Fiend, I guess. She helps resurrect the Fiend. She's been feuding with Randy Orton. She's been doing the promos. And then we've seen all this supernatural stuff. We've seen the black goo coming out of the mouth of Randy Orton. We've seen the Fiend be resurrected, come up from under the ring, and this new version of the Fiend. And we've seen fire come up from the ropes and all that kind of stuff. We've seen it. And I know that some people just can't buy into that. And I know some people, they look at wrestling definitely from a realism point of view, and they want everything to be based in reality, and they want everything to feel real, and they want everything to look real. And I subscribe to that partially. I prefer my pro wrestling to be based in reality. I prefer my storylines to not be over the top. I prefer to have a storyline that I can relate to. But on the other side of things, with the supernatural stuff, I don't mind it if it works, and I don't mind it if it's compelling. It's the same way that I watch, say, a Marvel film or I watch Star Wars. I know that's not based in reality. I know that, Tony Stark, there isn't a guy that's a billionaire that can fly around in the suit. I know that there isn't a god, essentially, with a hammer that's flying down. I know there isn't a guy that had so much gamma radiation that he turns green into a giant monster. I know there isn't a guy from the 1930s or 40s that had a super soldier serum and fought in World War II, and yet is still alive today and still one of the strongest, fastest, and greatest heroes on Earth. I understand that a purple alien from Titan hasn't come to Earth and isn't collecting these stones and trying to wipe out half of the universe's existence. Because I understand that it's entertainment, and I understand that it's a television program, and I understand it's a film. It's just about your ability to lose yourself in that universe, and I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that with the Fiend and Randy Orton, in the same way that I didn't have a problem losing myself in the universe of The Undertaker or Kane or any supernatural character that they've had before. And I know people don't like it when you compare The Fiend to, say, The Undertaker, but it really is the modern day version. The Undertaker's retired, that character is gone now, and The Fiend is filling that supernatural void. And The Fiend isn't The Undertaker in the same way that The Undertaker wasn't The Fiend. They're separate entities. But, this supernatural stuff, I think it's compelling. I think it's compelling. It's... sometimes professional wrestling, especially nowadays, it's a variety show. I think that's what made last night's show so great. I think that's what made last night's match card so great, is every single match was different in its own way, and it served a purpose in its own way. You had the celebrity match with Bad Bunny, which was excellent. You had the technical match with Seth Rollins and Cesaro. That was excellent. You had the opening match, which was the powerhouse match, that was excellent. You had the main event match, which maybe was a little bit more of a technical match, but it was historic for a variety of reasons. Every single match is different. Every single storyline is different. And when you have a difference of characters, that's what makes it compelling to watch as a television show. We complain all the time that sometimes the WWE superstars are too cookie cutter, they're too similar. Well, nobody's similar to Bray Wyatt right now. And the evolution that this guy has had with this character over the course of the last 18 months is tremendous. It's absolutely tremendous. And I was the first person that I was saying, to be honest, at points last year, that I felt that the Bray Wyatt Firefly Funhouse character, and maybe even to a certain extent the Fiend, not as much as the Bray Wyatt Firefly Funhouse character, but I felt that, not that it was getting stale, but they were walking a fine line when it came to it. When you had the Firefly Funhouse segments every week, and they just were similar, and the Fiend would come out and they would do the same stuff over and over again, you need some evolution. Well, that right there that you can see on there staring at you, the Fiend, that's evolution right there. Now, is the Fiend going to stay like that forever going forward? I don't think so. I think we could see a scenario whereby, again, this is kind of the Fiend recovering, and the way I always look at this, I try and relate it to comic books because I'm a comic book nerd, but I kind of feel like the Fiend is sort of in that realm of supernatural stuff that you might expect to see in comic books. I can almost see it as as sort of a Wolverine, a Logan kind of situation, whereby if we're meant to believe that this Fiend character is immortal and can't be killed and can't die and can't disappear, then maybe he's just slowly recovering. Maybe this is the version that, after months of recovery, came back, but eventually he will get back to that other Fiend character. I think that's maybe the direction that they're going in with that one, with the Fiend. So again, I think that it was slightly surprising that it wasn't going to be a cinematic match. When you think about it now, you do, I suppose, have to wonder about how that would play out in front of a live crowd, in front of 25,000 fans. Also, you have to look at it as the entrance that the Fiend is going to have tonight is going to be spectacular. As I mentioned, I think the most obvious outcome would be that the Fiend wins. You considering if the Fiend loses, where do you go from here? The fact the Fiend lost to Randy Orton anyway, because he technically lost that match at Tables, Ladders, and Chairs. The fact he lost that was surprising because the Fiend doesn't lose unless your name's Bill Goldberg. So the Fiend's beating the likes of John Cena, Daniel Bryan, all these other names, Seth Rollins, Finn Balor. It doesn't make sense for the Fiend to lose this one because the whole story has been about Randy Orton trying to make the Fiend disappear, trying to get rid of the Fiend, trying to kill the Fiend, frankly, and that the Fiend is immortal. He can't die. So surely the complete story arc here is that the Fiend would win the match because he's been resurrected and he can finish this story. I don't think it should continue post WrestleMania. I think they've done a good job at stretching this out until now. And I know some people have said, it's gone on too long and all that kind of stuff. To be honest, for me, a story can be stretched out for a long period of time as long as there's evolution in it. As long as there's evolution, as long as there's it's like a good book. As long as there's chapters and each chapter leads you wanting more and there's a cliffhanger at the end of every chapter, then that's not a problem. I think part of the problem maybe with this story and why some people have said that it's gone on too long is that for certain periods of time, we were just waiting for the Fiend to return because we knew he was going to return. Maybe that was part of the problem, is that the end goal of having the Fiend return was exciting, and that moment that he returned at Fastlane was exciting, and the look that the Fiend has come back with is exciting. The only issue is that everyone knew we were going to get to that spot. And sometimes when the outcome is slightly predictable, it can be a little bit boring for some people. And again, the outcome for this one is slightly predictable tonight because I don't see any situation where the Fiend doesn't win. I think the Fiend absolutely destroys him. I don't think, even though it's just a stand-up traditional wrestling match, I don't think that that there isn't some wacky supernatural stuff that doesn't happen. Considering the story that we're telling here, considering the participants in the match, you would think it's highly likely. I mean, it's very, very likely, let's be honest, that the Fiend somehow will do something that's supernatural, something that's different, whether that's multiple versions of himself appearing, whether that's, again, in the middle of the match, he just turns back into or reverts to his original self. I don't know. As long as it's not projections of maggots and cockroaches and whatever on the ring like they had at WrestleMania 33, I'm down. And I think that's an important point to bring up as well. That these are two guys that they had their match at WrestleMania 33, WWE Championship. Bray Wyatt was the WWE Champion. And that storyline heading into it, that was a long story. That was going on since, it must have been like September time, something like that, on SmackDown Television, on SmackDown Live. And that was a good story. Randy Orton joining the Wyatt family, infiltrating the Wyatt family, became the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Luke Harper was hesitant and saw Randy Orton for really what he was. And Randy Orton eventually infiltrates the family so much that he burns down the Wyatt family compound. And that's what this story's been about now, is that Bray Wyatt remembers. And in the same way, he's had a lot of these stories, whether it's the likes of, whether it's John Cena or other names, he remembers if you wronged him in the past. And that's kind of been the same here. He remembers that Randy Orton wronged him in the past and he's trying to get revenge. And Randy Orton did to him what he did to the Wyatt family compound. He burnt him down to a crisp. And yet Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, is able to come back because he's immortal. That match at WrestleMania, that feud heading into WrestleMania in 2017 was excellent. It was excellent. It was one of the best things on SmackDown for a long period of time, and it was very enjoyable. The match was awful. No fault of their own. I don't think it was Bray Wyatt or Randy Orton's fault. It wasn't because they were doing bad wrestling or anything like that. It was because the production, the way that match was set up, was terrible. They were having an average match, and the next thing you know, you're projecting maggots and cockroaches and worms and all that kind of stuff over the ring, and it was just... They were going for something that was supernatural. They were going for something that was different, but it just came off as really tacky and bad. It wasn't good technology. It was just a projector. Randy Orton was trying to imply that he was really freaked out by it, looking at this projector. It was just a projector, though. That's all it was, and it was just... The match was centered around that, which again didn't make any sense either. It was very bad. And then to top it off, you think, well, at least they're going to have a match after WrestleMania that will actually, they'll say, look, the WrestleMania match wasn't great, but we can have a good one. A few weeks later, they had the House of Horrors match at Extreme Rules, and that was even worse. So we're hoping here that hopefully they can actually deliver a great WrestleMania match. I don't know if it is going to be a technical masterpiece, though. As I said, this is a match that, if you're going to book this logically, and if you're going to book this correctly, the Fiend should defeat Randy Orton in seconds. He should. They should start off the match. Randy Orton should be all freaked out. He doesn't know what's going on. Randy Orton immediately should hit the RKO and the Fiend should just pop back up. Or they should hit the RKO and the Fiend kicks out of one and gets back up. And I know people will say, well, isn't that burying Randy Orton's finisher? Isn't that making Randy Orton look weak? Well, you're making the Fiend look strong because that's what he is. It's a supernatural character. And it doesn't matter for Randy Orton. Does it matter if Randy Orton, if he has the RKO and he kicks out of one? No. You know, there's so much equity, there's so much stock in Randy Orton and that finisher that if the Fiend kicks out at one, it makes the Fiend look strong. So, as I mentioned, my prediction would be for this one, I think The Fiend wins. I think The Fiend wins comfortably. Again, if I was booking this, I would have The Fiend destroy him really, really quickly. I just don't see... Especially, they got to a point with The Fiend where they started to do those sort of back and forth matches. They could start to do those back and forth matches. He had a good one with Daniel Bryan, and he was starting to show, you know what, actually with this character, you can do a match where you do the sort of the comeback and all that kind of stuff. You can do that. I don't know if this is the time for it, though. I don't know if this is the time for it. Considering what Randy Orton's done to The Fiend, it would make sense for The Fiend just to be fully resurrected, get his powers back, and destroy Randy Orton very quickly. But we'll have to wait and see if that happens or not. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on The Fiend versus Randy Orton tonight at WrestleMania 37 Night 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved with the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings, and get to people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.